Your Studio One kiln will be delivered to you on a lorry with a tail lift. The driver will carefully lower the crate on the tail lift with a hand pump truck, taking it to the most accessible part of your building. To unpack your kiln, it's handy to have a knife, a pair of metal cutting pliers, a crowbar, and a trusty old hammer. Cut away the plastic wrapping and carefully lift off the box on the top. That box contains your kiln furniture, the shelves, the props, and the kiln wash too. Snip through those metal straps. Next, using a crowbar or a wrench or even a piece of wood, lever off the sides to the crate, making sure you don't touch the kiln itself. The kiln stand is wrapped in white foam and attached to one of the uprights. It's this item here. Please don't throw it away, you'll need that in a minute. And take off the cardboard and a bit more packaging, all there to prevent your kiln getting scratched in delivery. Now go and find someone to help you carry it. There's a handle conveniently located on either side of the kiln. It's not actually that heavy. With care, it's a simple two-person lift. Assembling the stand for the kiln is a simple 5-minute job. Open up the kit, the one you didn't throw away, and you'll find the kiln bungs, the stand, nuts and bolts, and the 4 plastic feet. Loosely assemble the stand using the nuts and bolts provided. Keep the feet inside the frame. The pre-drilled holes show you where each piece goes. It's very difficult to get this wrong. Not impossible, but very difficult. With a standard flat-headed screwdriver, go around and tighten each bolt up. You can use a spanner on the back to hold the nut in place, or you may find, as I did, that just pushing with your finger is sufficient. Then flip it over and press on those 4 plastic feet. Flip it back and tap it on the floor just to check those feet are set. Place the stand in your designated firing area and carry the kiln in. You'll need to get your electrician to install for you a 30-amp fuse into your consumer unit, along with the appropriate cabling and a 30-amp isolating box close to where you've got your kiln located. The Studio One must be hardwired into the switch box. When you have got the cable safely connected, you can switch on the fuse and now turn on the kiln. When the kiln is switched on, it will beep into life. The computer will run a self-diagnostic test and will be ready to program when you can see the room temperature on the display. At this point, you can do a fun test to see exactly how sensitive your kiln is. Reach inside and grab the thermocouple. That's the little metal probe you'll find halfway down the chamber that reads the kiln temperature. And you'll notice the temperature increasing on the display on the computer. That's the kiln reading your body temperature. How cool is that? Inside the kiln, you'll find the information pack. Do take a moment to have a look through all these. There's a general kiln instruction manual, there's parametric cones, there's a firing log, and this is really useful. This is a manual for the computer. There's a handy chart in the back with a breakdown of the preset firings the kiln can do, and a great aid to future fault finding, the wiring diagram. With the kiln, you'll get 3 pairs of witness cones to test your first firing. The first firing we'd suggest you fire your kiln to will be a cone 01. Take them out of the bag and snap them apart. To test a 0-1 firing, we need a 0-2, a 0-1 and a 1. The cone number is printed on the bottom of each cone. Find a spare piece of bish to stand the cones on. This can prevent them from sticking to your kiln shelf during the firing. So these are the 3 cones you put in. This will be the hottest cone. This is your cone 1. This is the guard cone. We don't want that to move during the firing because that's hotter than a 0-1. This is the firing cone. This is your 0-1 cone. This is the cone we're firing to. So we want this to bend over and just the tip to just touch the ground. And this is the 0-2 cone, which is your guide cone. And we want this to not only bend over and touch the ground, we want it to go a bit further and lay down on the surface of the tile. And those 3 will give us a good indication of exactly where we are in the firing, whether we've hit the perfect 0-1 firing, or if this one started to bend, we know we've gone beyond that and we're firing a bit hot. Or if this one, for example, hasn't bent at all and these 2 haven't bent, we know we've not only not reached this temperature, but we've also not reached this temperature either. So putting 3 in is a very sensible thing to do. It gives you a good, precise indication of exactly where we're firing. This is what the cones will look like after they've been fired. This is the 0-2 cone, which you can see is bent over and laid down flat. This is the 0-1 cone, which is just bent over and touched the surface of the tile. And this is the 1. Now this one hasn't moved. And don't worry if you don't get this on your first firing. There are adjustments you can make to get this right. So that's how you open the box. Inside the kit you'll get 3 full octagonal shelves and 1 half shelf. This is the maximum number of shelves you'd feel comfortable putting inside a Studio One. Any more and you're liable to be shielding the ware from the heating elements. You also get 4 of each of 7 various height kiln props which you'd use to separate the kiln shelves during the firing. Just like this. You also get a bag of Kiln Wash. Kiln Wash is used to coat the kiln shelves to prevent the glaze from sticking to the surface of the kiln shelf during the firing. In normal firing you'll be dry footing or stilting pieces, but accidents do happen. And if a glazed piece falls over during a firing and lands on a kiln shelf that hasn't been coated with Kiln Wash, that piece will become fused to the surface of the kiln shelf, and not only will you lose the piece, but you may well lose the kiln shelf too. To coat the kiln shelves, you'll need to mix up the Kiln Wash with some water. Kiln Wash contains silica, which is really no good for your lungs. So ensure you do this in a well ventilated area, and even consider using a dust mask. Add the water to the powder and mix up until you get a cream-like consistency. Keep mixing until all the lumps have gone. Then apply a wash to one side of your kiln shelves. Leave the shelves for at least 24 hours to dry completely before firing in your kiln. Kiln wash can wear off, so you may need to redo this from time to time. You'll also need to kiln wash the floor of your kiln. Using a brush and a hoover, carefully remove all the dust from the floor of your kiln. Now take special care not to get any kiln wash on the heating elements. A splash of kiln wash can be enough to break an element. I like to place the bowl of kiln wash on the floor of the kiln, then using the brush, carefully paint up to the walls. Again, it's advisable to leave this for 24 hours to dry thoroughly before firing the kiln. For the first firing, we suggest going to a cone 01. This is likely to be a higher cone than you'll normally be firing to. This firing will test that the kiln is fully functional. It also tests your electrical connection is sound, and it will also be putting a protective coating of oxide on the heating elements, which help prolong their life. And most importantly, it allows you to see exactly what happens during a firing, how hot the kiln gets, what noises the kiln makes during the firing, and how long the kiln takes to heat up and cool down. Load all of your dry kiln washed kiln shelves into the kiln chamber, using the props to separate each kiln shelf. Ensure that the props go directly above the props underneath. You want the weight to be going straight down through the props and not the kiln shelves. Make sure you don't stand a prop directly in front of the thermocouple, as this can lead to inaccurate temperature readings. Include the two sets of cones, one at the top of the kiln and one at the bottom of the kiln. Close your lid and the kiln's ready to fire. Make sure your computer is reading idle and the room temperature. If it's reading anything else, press stop to get back to idle. From that, press number 1, which will take you into the cone fire settings. Then enter 0, 1 and press enter. Then we choose the speed. We've got fast, medium or slow. We're going to go with standard or medium. So press enter. The preheat option is a way of putting some heat into the kiln before the firing starts. We don't need it for this firing, so we leave it at 0. Press enter. Hold is asking us how long do we want to hold when we get to the top temperature. This is a super function that allows you to fine-tune each firing. We'll set it to 10 minutes for this firing, so press 1, 0, enter. Cool is a function which allows us to control the cooling. We don't need it on this firing, so we leave it set to 0. Press enter. And now we're back to idle. If we now press 6, which is program review, we can check the program that we've just entered. So the kiln's telling us there's no delay to a cone 01, which is going up to 1119 degrees at a standard speed with no preheat and a hold time of 10 minutes. The cooling is set to 0. Press start one more time and the kiln will begin to fire. You'll hear a click and the 3 lights on the right hand side of the computer will come on. This is the computer sending a signal to the elements saying go. This firing will take around 8.5 hours to get to temperature and perhaps 4 to 5 hours to cool down. When it's cooled down, take out the kiln furniture, check your cones and give the chamber another vacuum. Then you can use your kiln to fire to whatever temperature or cone you want to. Here's a simple, useful little tip for you that'll make loading the kiln much quicker and easier. Keep your props laid out in size order so you won't waste time searching through a pile of props to find the one you need. Also, when you're not using your kiln shelves, store them on their edge next to the kiln. This should make them last longer and prevent them from cracking. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact us.